Welcome to the Daphne Child Grantee Spotlight Series, where we showcase the innovative work of our grantees in combating violence against children. The Daphne Child Programme is a collaborative initiative funded by the European Union, led by Eurochild and Terre des Hommes, empowering grassroots civil society organizations across 9 European countries through a comprehensive 3-year sub-granting and capacity building program. You can learn more at daphne.childhub.org. That's daphne.childhub.org. I'm Zsófia Karetka, and today I'm speaking with Tom O'Brien. He's the CEO of the Community After Schools project, known as CASPER, about their project Listen to Us, an initiative empowering children in Dublin's northeast inner city to lead conversations about violence prevention. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. To start, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your role at CASPER, and also how the organization came to focus on this community?
Yes, thank you, Sophia. Yeah, my name is Tom O'Brien. I'm the CEO of CASPER the last 3 years, and before that I worked in adult education and addiction services. Working in CASPER stands for the Community After Schools project. It's based in the northeast inner city of Dublin, which is a particularly historical part of the city that has suffered a lot from the drug problem and crime and poverty, and now struggling with integration of migrants and the challenges that poses. But we're in the community for the last 30 years. This year, 2025, we're celebrating 30 years of CASPER. So that's 30 years of a community project that was set up by local people to respond to the needs of children and their parents who were trying to get work in Ireland in the early 90s, just before the Celtic Tiger, before the Irish economy started to grow. There was a lot of unemployment, historical unemployment, intergenerational unemployment. And CASPER was kind of a chicken and egg. It was to set up a service, number one, to provide a space, a safe space for children to develop off the streets after school, try and prevent them from getting involved in crime and violence and drugs, all of that. And also then to provide their parents with a training opportunity to become what was known as childcare workers at the time. Now we talk about early years educators. So for many years, we trained the parents and their neighbours and their friends, mostly women, to become early years educators. More recently, we're just focusing on the children's services, 2 after schools projects working with around 70 children, and a creche with 15 children with diverse needs. And then we have a separate part of the organisation that works with adult education that's now focusing on trying to meet the needs of the community. We recently ran a programme called Future Female Leaders, which was to help mostly women as well to reflect on leadership and to have the confidence to think about leadership in their own community and in their workplace, and to give them the motivation and a bit of coaching and inspiration to engage more leadership. So that's CASPER. This year, we're very happy to be involved in the Daphne Child project, and our project is Listen to Us. So happy to talk about that as well.
So the project says that it will position children as leaders in addressing drug-related violence in their community. Can you give us an overview of what this involves?
Primarily what the program is about is recognizing that the children we work with come from a community that has been historically saturated with the drugs and violence associated with drug use and the poverty and unemployment that's associated with that. So CASPER for a long time has recognized that the children we're working with have experienced trauma, they're exposed to trauma, they're exposed to the effects of drugs. It's so normalized in their life. And I suppose institutions like school and after schools projects and youth services and family support services and other community services have developed over the years in the North Inner City to try and provide safe spaces for children and their families to grow and develop. So CASPER's role in that kind of network of services is focusing on children in the creche, kind of preschool, and then in the after schools. Children that are in primary school, age 7 to 9, 10, 11, and to try and bring a little bit more intentionality to the work we do with them in the after school. I mean, I suppose the perception is we provide homework support, we provide a bit of food, we provide a bit of social support, we provide educational, creative, fun activities. But we've recognized for a long time that as the children come to the door every day, they come with a whole historical, emotional, broad experience that, their behaviors can be reflected in challenging behaviors, as we call it, but they are really just surviving. And these children are surviving in a community where most recently in the last kind of 10 years, there's been a feud between two drug gangs, people shot dead on the street, significant number of people, and that has a huge traumatic effect on the community. And the legacy of that, just the history of that problem going right back to Dublin in the 50s, which was a very poor Dublin, very tenement Dublin. There was these Georgian houses that were built by the British during their rule in Ireland. Very nice houses, but eventually they became slums of Dublin, and they housed a lot of families, a lot of children. And the children are carrying the legacy of that poverty, even going back further to the famine in 1847, and people came to Dublin. So the people we work with today, the children we work with, both come from that heritage of famine families that came to Dublin to try and survive or to ship out to New York, but also modern migration. They're coming now from Africa, from Asia, from South America, and Ireland is changing rapidly. So we have children that are bringing traumas from historical Ireland, children that are bringing traumas from other countries, and they're all mixing together. And that is creating new challenges and new opportunities. The challenges, I suppose, is just blatant racism, violent racism. And more recently in Dublin, there's Indian families have been a focus of attack in Tallaght. Many migrants afraid to come into the city centre of Dublin in the evening because of the hostility. So, like when we saw this opportunity to apply for this grant, we thought, look, where Casper is in this situation, it's a melting pot. Our children are absorbing this. It's been normalized in the children, so we want to bring them, a safe space to reflect on violence. And I suppose the opportunity as well is that it's the Daphne Child being so focused on the rights of children and how those rights can be communicated by children to other children. We're very interested in that kind of child-led campaign and trying to use, in this particular project, use particular forms of art and drama and role play to elicit, a conversation and voices from the children somehow will capture what it means to live in a community where there's various types of violence reflected in drug intimidation, or children who come from families where there's, intimidation of those families to get involved in drugs, to trade drugs, to use drugs. There's intimidation then of those families to recoup drug-related debts. And that's a very sinister type of threat that grandparents have to get involved paying off debts. And fear, I suppose, is the biggest kind of threat. If you can elicit fear in people, you can try and get them to do, what you want, to get them deeper involved in the drug trade. And then for some of these families and for some of the young people, the teenagers in particular, they've looked back and they've only experienced a limited amount of choices and a certain stigmatization of their identity as teenagers, inner city teenagers. There's nothing really for them in terms of the opportunities that others have. So they feel discriminated against. They see an easy way to make money and they get involved. And then, of course, the cycle of, prison and post-prison and, deeper into the hierarchy of drug gangs. And we're trying to be with the children in a way that's safe, using a trauma-informed approach, recognizing that to reflect on the topic of violence is a very sensitive topic for children that have been exposed to domestic violence, intimidation, and various forms of violence, suicide, threats, and then just bullying at, I suppose at a teenage level, or at a school level, at a child level, just children can become aggressive with each other. They can become, insecure and threaten others, and they feel that becomes an option for them. So we're excited that this project will help us to develop models, maybe, or programs that will help the children express their voice and have their voice heard. So through creative methodologies, get them involved in reflecting and thinking, and then capture that through a podcast and a social media campaign. And I suppose the hope is that the voices of the children will speak to other voices of a wider audience of children in school and other youth projects and across the country and across Europe even. Yeah, I suppose children can be underestimated, young human beings rather than beings in themselves. And, I've never worked with children directly before I came to Casper. I worked primarily with young people and adults, but, I really love working with children because I see their eyes, I see their excitement, and they're so full of potential and they're so open to learning. And Casper has always had a beautiful approach to working with children that was very heart-centered, very much caring about the person. And someone described it recently as a big hug. Casper is a big hug around the children to make them feel cared for, make them feel loved, make them feel special, make them feel safe. What we do, in terms of creativity and engagement is secondary to the relationship.
I would like to pick up on the fact that you mentioned that these children may be witnesses to intimidation, shootings, drug-related deaths, all kinds of awful things. And I guess that leads to fear and silence. How do you break through this silence and fear? Because I guess this has a really strong impact in their ability to seek help or to be able to share.
Yeah, it's a very good question because violence is a form of intimidation. Or drug dealers use violence as a form of intimidation to threaten people, and that induces fear and that induces silence. And the stigma attached to drug use and addiction is so real that further silences people that are suffering, people that are using, and people that are selling. So there's a lot of stigma around drug use that feeds the silence. I think one of the things about the Northeast inner city, going back over the last 30 years and even longer, is the community has a very strong sense of connection with each other, and has always been there's a strong identity attached to this community about neighborhood and community and connection and looking out for each other. It's not perfect, but as a result of that culture of watching out for each other, various, let's say, solidarity movements have evolved over the years. Networks, community networks have come together in the Northeast Vicinity to organize. And that has always been one of the strongest ways to overcome the silence and the fear and the intimidation, that feeling, something in common with others, a collective action. And as a result of that, this community has been good at organizing itself to lobby the government to change policy around drug use and drug policy and social exclusion in the form of racism and housing and so forth. But more recently, there has been a project called DRIVE, which stands for Drug-Related Intimidation and Associated Violence. And that project DRIVE is trying to raise awareness mostly through various types of social media and communication campaigns to highlight the importance of the services that are there. They're working with the Gardaí, the police, working with grandparents, and just that people have support and people have a way out of the silence. So using that same approach, Casper is in some way naively, but also bravely taking on this topic of violence, because we don't want to take a shallow approach, violence is bad and, bullying is bad and you shouldn't bully. We want really the children to reflect at a deeper level that is safe, that to try and connect violence with inequality, violence with injustice, violence with historical poverty, but trying to help the children understand what's behind violence. Often bullies are the most insecure people, and it's through dialogue and mediation, using these conflict resolution tools and methodologies. What is the opposite of violence? The opposite of violence is safety, welcome, security, loving environment, creative environment, inclusive environment. And Casper is a little hub in a wider community. And while the children are with us, we want them to feel valued, important, safe, and just treasured, really. So we have children who have been very traumatized, some children who've been very traumatized by various types of violence. And we work with those children in a very trauma-informed approach, which basically at a very simple level is being aware that trauma is something people carry in their bodies, and it can be latent and dormant for a long period of time, and it can come out in various forms, in illness, in aggression, in withdrawal, in bullying, and it can be in adults as well. So
it got me thinking when you mentioned how this community is kind of organizing itself, and there's a sense of brotherhood. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but whether you and your staff are from the community or have roots in the community, and if so, is that important in creating this atmosphere where these children can feel safe?
yes, it's a very important aspect of Casper. Historically, Casper has employed local people and trained local people, and we have probably now about a third of our staff, we have 30 staff, about a third of those are local people. I'm not local myself. I'm from Wicklow, which is in the countryside, but I've worked in Dublin for over 20 years, and I've worked in the North Inner City previously. But one of the challenges Casper's facing, which is a very interesting challenge and one that I didn't expect to encounter, which is to do with the diversity of our own staff. As Ireland changes, the children are diverse, so we have reflected them in the children who are in our projects, but also the staff who we employ are now diverse. So as the early years sector in Ireland develops, there's more expectations on staff and higher qualifications required. So we have recruited a number of Spanish staff who are coming from Spain as educators, and they're now working with local staff here. And the challenge we're facing is the integration of staff from different parts of the world with local staff. And it's a really interesting challenge because it's about, we're not just educators, we have educators with different assumptions from different cultures and things that we take for granted, what it means to be present to a child, or what it means to be an educator, or what it means to be trauma informed. These things have such many different nuances that it's leading to some challenges for us. As we reflect on those challenges, we become more crystal clear about what's important.
Yes, it's a good challenge to have. It's one that makes you richer in the
Yeah,
process
no,
of solving.
yeah, it's definitely a good challenge because it's real. It's not like diversity and inclusion and these issues are abstract. They're embodied, and there's a danger that we pathologize the inner city culture as well. That's something that I've been aware of. In this area, this community, we talk about the historical suffering and the historical problems, but that sometimes neglects the positive and the beauty of this community. And there's a risk that we see people as constantly as a deficit, and that can affect our approach. it reminds me just more and more the importance of being having a loving presence to people, because at the end of the day, I think that's what's most important.
I completely agree. That's all that matters, and that's all we remember
Yeah.
in the end. But just to come back to so this project, the children come to this community space after school, and they stay there for a few hours, I
Mm.
assume, and they go to workshops, and these workshops can be about art, storytelling, writing, drama. Tell me what else, and
Yeah.
tell me how these different approaches help children to express things that they might not be able to express this directly.
Yeah, so there's three phases to the project. The first is the engagement with the children. The second is capturing the voices on the podcast. And the third is a kind of a campaign where we, promote those voices. So we believe in Casper that, or many people who work with children really use creative methodologies, that are fun and imaginative and exploratory. So like art, of course, is a fantastic way to explore ideas and feelings and emotions and perceptions of the world. So along with art, you have drama, role play, maybe a little bit of theatre of the oppressed, which is a form of drama that I worked in the past, which explores oppression through role play. So storytelling is another very good methodology. So we're preparing these different methodologies to start in September for about 2 months. We run these workshops over a period of 2 months to engage the children creatively. Some will be more into the drama, some will be more into the art, some will be into the storytelling, to capture, multi kind of methodology approach with the children, to capture the different kind of voices and the different ways of expressing themselves around the topic of violence. So we're hoping that that'll be a fun, engaging, creative, and meaningful approach that will kind of help to bond the children as well in this project, because it's a fixed group of children over a period of time in a specific location with specialized facilitators and educators. So that will build a momentum of deep dive into the topic, bringing up various ideas and challenges that the children will voice. And I suppose it's, if there was one thing we'd like out of this project in terms of influence, is the recognition that the voice of the child is very valuable. And as an adult, I'm a very competent, educated adult, and I'm often consulted. But sometimes you're consulted in a way that you're not really being consulted. You know that your voice won't really matter at the end of the day. It's a tick box exercise.
Yeah. And indeed, one of the goals of the project is that is to ensure that children's voices influence key stakeholders and decision makers,
Mm.
rather than just being heard, as you mentioned.
Mm.
And that's a crucial distinction. But how do you hope to ensure that it really happens, that this influence is genuine and then leads to concrete changes? I know this is a big question and an enormous challenge.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on this?
I'm hoping that we will reach a point in this project where we say, yes, now that's it. It's that kind of epiphany point where we've created something that is obviously beautiful. The chorus of voices somehow in a podcast with visual arts in a campaign. So let's say we create this beautiful thing. It emerges out of this process with the children, and that then becomes a kind of a legacy, cultural moment or an artistic moment that echoes and that can't be ignored. So it's like in the North Inner City, not too far from where we have one of our projects, there's a sculpture at the crossroads where was the epicenter of the drug problem in the 90s, when drugs were sold on street corners. And now they're sold over the phone, so you don't need to hang around. You just make an appointment. But in the early 90s, the drug dealers were particularly dependent on location and corners. But now in the center of this crossroads is this flame, a sculpture of a flame, a hand and a flame. that represents the strength of the community and resilience and light and positivity. So that becomes a point every Christmas where the Christmas tree is there and remember all the people that have suffered as a result of drug-related deaths, really, and remembering the many, many people that have died from drug-related issues. So I'm hoping that we build momentum with a collection of voices that will have to be heard, and maybe then we can use that to focus on a few key issues. Like one of the issues we face is the lack of after school services. I mean, we work with about 70 children in the after schools. There's a survey that has been done in the northeast inner city that there's nearly a need for 2,000 places. So
Wow.
there isn't enough spaces, there isn't enough staff, there isn't enough funding. So there is a lot in this community, but there's new challenges as the North Inner City has become a housing place for migrants as well. So along with the history of violence and poverty, we now have integration as a particular challenge, housing as a particular challenge. So I'm not sure what particular aspect of violence we can influence other than listen to the voices, listen to us, listen to the children. At this stage, we're just focused on engagement and capturing the voices. And then I think we will come to that kind of creative, artistic moment where we'll have something very powerful and it'll be unstoppable. And the campaign will lead to something. I don't want to preempt it because I kind of want the children to be the namers of what it is. Something will, not just their voices, but ideas from their voices will name something. And it could be something very simple, as say having more safe spaces. It could be about dealing with intimidation. It could be, I think children just want to have fun, children just want to play and they want to be safe. And I think they want safe parks and safe public spaces.
Yes, this work must require enormous amounts of trust, both from the children sharing their experiences, and we've been talking about that, but also from the community and you as well, allowing children to lead these conversations. So I'm wondering what has surprised you most about the children's capacity to address these serious issues, and how has this whole experience with them so far shaped your understanding of resilience?
It's a really good question. I think children fundamentally just want to be loved, to be valued for who they are. And I've seen that in the last year, particularly because I'm an educator, an adult educator, and I brought a lot of focus on engaging children in activities that help them reflect and learn and be happy. But while I was focused on that, I was kind of missing a more important, equally important, but I'd say nearly a more important aspect of the work, which is the connection we have with the children. And as I began to focus on the connection, I realized that's really what we're trying to do. If you connect with children, you can engage them in activities. But if you don't connect with them, and when I mean connect, I mean at a heart level, at a deeper gut level, where you journey with them in a very child-focused way and a very caring way, that they trust you. And that trust comes out of that earlier challenge I was reflecting on about integration of new staff from other countries to Irish staff to traditional North Inner City staff, that learning to trust each other as educators, learning to realize what's the most important thing is that children feel safe, cared for, and loved. So once you have the eyes of the child looking at you and they feel safe and they're looking for guidance, that's the trust. You've earned their trust. That takes work. And you have to be ready to do the work yourself as an educator. You have to be ready to travel that journey in yourself, in your own heart. And once you're at that stage, then you see the children's eyes and they light up. They're just full of excitement, of hope, of the joy of wanting to just play and learn. So for that to happen, you need staff that are ready and prepared and grounded and with the focus, and you need spaces that are safe and clean and protected. And then you need activities that are child friendly and child fun and child led. So that's been the most important thing for me is connecting with the children through their eyes into their hearts, and maintaining that connection of trust. And when the children get more out of the service and more out of the activities, the parents, are the beneficiaries. I mean, they see how happy they are. They see how they light up. They see how they look forward going to the club, and it has so many ripple effects in their family. And then the wider community see Casper doing new activities, new programs, engaging in new challenges. So that itself is challenging, but it brings opportunities. Like we're not afraid to tackle serious issues and difficult issues. We're not trying to entertain the children. We're not trying to just have fun and entertain them and mind them like babysitters, which is an important role, but we're educators, firstly from the heart, and secondly from the mind. It's bringing that into this project and bringing that learning, which this project has been a catalyst in helping us to think about it more deeply, because we really want to connect with the children. When you connect with the children, you connect with their story, you connect with their trauma, you connect with their challenges. Whereas if you try and control the children, if you try and herd them around in groups, if you try and manage them, it's chaos. It's not possible. And that's what it's unique about the after schools is we're not school. School provides a very important function in the children's lives, and it's a very particular structure with resources and a goal, and they do that in a wonderful way. But the after school is a social place for the children. They call it their club, my club. It's a place where they're safe, they have fun, they connect with other children, they learn something, they relax, and then they go home tired.
Thank you so much for these thoughts. And what would be your top advice to other organizations who work with similar children from a similarly challenged background? Any practical advice?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a very respectful question, because services that work with children in communities that are, have a lot of challenges, or various ethnic minority groups, or various diverse groups of children with disabilities, or other challenges that they have. I think the most important lesson is to trust the child, to trust that children know a lot more than we give them credit for, in a sense that the way they learn and the way they communicate and the way they explore topics is so important. And if you can create, if you have the ethos, firstly, where every child is unique and at the center, then out of that will flow this heart connection where you really value each child, but not just at a conceptual level, but at a deeper level. And so trusting the children that they will be okay. You don't have to take too much control of the direction or of the methodology. So in order to do that, you have to make sure you're clear about your purpose. What is your purpose? And if your purpose is child-centered, then it has to be really child-centered, to try and not get too caught up in bureaucracy or in professionalism of the sector or in outcomes, because these are all pressures that community projects and NGOs are under, more and more pressure, compliance and governance, which is all very important. But what matters at the end of the day is that the children feel cared for, feel special, and feel their unique personality shines. It's about alignment. I was at a workshop recently on workplace well-being, and basically, to create workplace well-being, it's not about having yoga and a bowl of fruit, which is a very nice thing to have, but it's about having an alignment between your purpose, your policies, and your actions. We've also learned to try and divide our work into three simple things.
Okay.
So everybody doesn't forget, what are we doing? First is keep them safe. Group of policies and actions around safety, safeguarding in particular. Second is connect with the child. That's the relationship. Look out for them, inquire into them, be curious about them. Connect at a deep level. And third is engage them in some creative learning. Now they are very interdependent. You can't keep them safe if you don't connect, and you can't engage if you don't connect. So yeah, those three focuses have helped us to focus, all the policies and practices into a very simple methodology: is keep them safe, connect with them, and engage them.
I think that's wonderful practical advice, actually, that a lot of organizations and individuals can use to remind themselves of what they are really doing on a daily basis. Thank you so much, Tom O'Brien, for the Casper project, Community After Schools project. Thank you for sharing your insights, and I wish you great luck with this project in the future. I will be eagerly following it as it unfolds.
Thank you very much. It's been an opportunity, a pleasure, and a much appreciated opportunity for Casper to speak on the podcast today.
Thank you. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Daphne Child Program's Grantee Spotlight series. You can learn more about this program and all the 48 grantee projects across 9 countries at our website daphne.childhub.org. Until next time, goodbye.